Welcome to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast. And you're very welcome back to the Hawkeye Sidekick Rugby Union podcast with your host Mark Kennedy, joined again this week by Liam O'Brien. Liam, how are things?
Great, Mark. How are we getting on?
Yeah, good. Very good now. Six Nations nearly upon us, but I suppose we have to review last weekend, all the European action from the four provinces, Toulouse, Munster, but also have a look at Leinster, Ulster and Connacht in action. The Munster Rugby Benetton rugby game in Treviso could be a tough game for Munster given the record of Benetton this season at home. Also, we'll have a look at Six Nations and some contract news or rumours going on around the Irish provinces. I suppose, Liam, we'll start first with European Cup, Toulouse and Munster. What was your overall reactions to the game?
Yeah, look, I mean, you'd have to be kind of very proud of that performance defensively. Colossal in that first 25 minutes when, again, it was one of those kind of inevitable times where we were going to get ship a heavy defeat. But no, we struck at it. We came back in the final 10 minutes of that first half, hodding it with the try. And from then on, really, there was nothing in it. And actually, we ended up, at half time, just a few points down. And in the second half, it was to and fro. The lead changed hands a number of times. But I mean, I suppose just to go back to the start there, yeah, Toulouse did very well in the first 8 minutes there. They got a penalty from Jaminet, who, like, just from first moment when he gathered the ball, he was on top form as a player. So then, of course, when Malia getting a try to over the top ball, and yeah, so that was a very powerful start.
Certainly was. It was the early onslaught that we previewed last weekend. Just that Munster had to be prepared for that onslaught. And to be fair, there's certain respect talking about it, but then being in actual action, I thought the breakdown work for Toulouse was pretty superb. Quick ruck ball there for Dupont and Tamac as well to really release players. But again, Jaminet's boot, it's going to be so vital here for both Toulouse and also France, I would say, this year. He got the radar in straight away after a minute, as you say, penalty given away by Peter O'Mahony, pinged that to breakdown. Malia's try, I mean, I think that's just result of kind of concerted pressure, I would say, from Toulouse, isn't it, Liam? To be fair, I mean, there's nothing really that Munster could do there in that situation.
No, yeah, but I mean, before that, if we think back before that, Munster actually got a penalty for an offside and diving the ball, and Carberry gave a good kick down the line and Scanlon overthrew the ball. So I mean, we were kind of soldiers of our own misfortune in a way, you know what I mean? Because that was only a few minutes before that. But yeah, look, they went 8-0 up. And it was certainly looking ominous at that stage. But the one thing I will say, even at the in that 10-20 minute mark, the scrum held up very well for Munster. So John Ryan was immense. I mean, he had it in the scrum, right? And there was no worries about Munster in the scrum. I suppose also it was poor Munster passing too. I mean, we weren't quite, camped on our 5 meter line. We were getting into our 22, and our passing was letting us down and kind of, letting them off the hook as well. Marchand, of course, was tremendous as well. I thought he hit a tremendous game at the breakdown. I thought Arnold there again, that first 20 minutes was absolutely colossal. And then, of course, we had the hits there. I think it was a 26 minute, some massive hits from either side, actually.
Oh, my word. It was classic club rugby, wasn't it? And some of the hits that went in. I mean, I think Tadhg, Frisch, there were some great hits coming in from Munster, but I suppose the Richie Arnold hit has been getting an awful lot of coverage post the game. Maybe it was selective TV replaying from a French production TV perspective, but what was your view on that, the Richie Arnold hit on Joey Carberry? That could have been a fundamental game changer if that had gone to TMO.
Yeah, I think that initially, as I said, those 3 massive hits all came in the space of 2 minutes, and I think that maybe that might have been one of the ways that the referee just missed out on seeing that hit. But I mean, Arnold, he came out of line quickly, right, and he went full on shoulder to Carberry's head, and it was like sending off. It wasn't even going to be a yellow; it was going to be a straight sending off. And I suppose when you compare that, right, and the fact that there was the TMO or no one, alluded to it, and yet later on for Munster, we had a different thing where Munster's yellow, it was the TMO called to the ref. So I mean, there was certainly a different treatment there on both those occasions.
Absolutely, and I suppose we can get to that Healy yellow card in due course, but I suppose it was a tough, topsy-turvy opening half an hour from Munster. By this stage, Mike Haley had to go off with the ankle injury. Malachi Fikotoa had come on at centre. Jack Crowley moving to full back. But to be fair, as you've said here, Liam, getting back in the game on 30 minutes with that John Hodnett score, after a series of very impressive drives.
Oh yeah, and you know what? He's quite, he's not a big man, to be fair, John Hodnett. But by God, he can carry the ball. He really is quite a powerful ball carrier. Hodnett with Klein, massive latch on there, absolutely massive. It should be done a lot more. Klein latching onto lads, you know what I mean, for scoring tries. That would certainly do the job as well. But I suppose, look, then we had Carberry miss with the conversion there, with the 2 points.
But yeah, no, totally agree. I mean, it was a great effort of John Hodnett. Sean Klein thought the pack was superb there. And in fairness to Carberry, after that conversion miss, he nails the penalty there. Ty Byrne, great play there as well to win that penalty. So to be fair, it was all in the melting pot here, Liam, going in at half time. Munster, I suppose, much the happier the two sides, I think, given how things had gone in that last 10 minutes. And we continued it in the second half.
Fekatoa made a great burst at the beginning of the second half. Then he had a great run off a scrum there. So he was very much to the fore. But yeah, I mean, look, 48 minutes, probably the best, I think I was fair to say, Munster try scored in European competition since Ronan O'Gara in Bordeaux back in the early 2000. Yeah, I would have to say that. Like, I mean, the whole build-up, the whole Fekatoa one hand out of the tackle, onto Coombs again out of the tackle one hand, and onto Daly, Casey, who flew down the line and just was unlucky to get he was unlucky to get stopped there. And then it culminated in Carberry kicking across to the right hand corner, Hodnett coming in field, then it's Nash, and beautiful line from Byrne. So incredible try, really. I mean, I kind of secretly imagine some of the Toulouse players actually saying, "Well done," That was a try of beauty,
I think so. I think there was really a stunned silence around the erstwhile on, particularly with the home faithful. I think they would have been expecting something very similar from their side. But for Munster to produce this, I think really shows the evolution of the attacking game plan when they can get it right. I thought it was very quick, incisive offloading. That was key here. But I have to say, you've touched on it, Malachi Fikotoa. I'm delighted for him. I thought that was a very prominent performance coming off the bench. I thought his direct line running caused Toulouse no end of problems all day. And, looking to offload at every given point. And I think this is the template. I think this is the blueprint here to really engage Fekatoa. And it's just now the little cohesion issues around the offload for supporting line runners to really support Fekatoa when he's at ball in hand, because he's a powerful unit.
He is, absolutely. And as I said, look, he was very prominent in that first 10 minutes, second half, in particular, and showing what he's capable of doing. But, I suppose, look, we had initially this conversion missed by Carberry. That's 4 points missed. And immediately it was very succinct that on immediately comes Healy for Joey Carberry. So that's quite clear. Yeah, so, I mean, at that stage then, Jaminet got a penalty to bring it back to 14-13 lead. Then I suppose we had Healy getting a nice penalty, 14-16, Murray coming on. I suppose really the thing for me was the Healy yellow.
Yeah.
I mean, lead with the hand. I would have to call it and say probably for me a definite yellow. And again, not in the severe side. I mean, like I mean, nothing like that. But it was definitely yellow.
I think with the laws of the game, I would cast my mind back to when both against Saracens in Thomond Park a few seasons ago, he got sent off for a few forearms, didn't he? Right at the end of that Champions Cup game in Thomond Park. So, I mean, it's harsh, but you consider that to Richie Arnold hit here. But I think to be fair, it's the rules of the game here, and TMO was fairly quick to spot it. Now, I mean,
yeah, again, as I said, we started this. I mean, it's amazing that TMO was able to spot that, isn't it? But didn't spot the Arnold incident. But anyway,
exactly, but that's another day entirely, and I think maybe casts a bit of a question mark in terms of television footage going into a World Cup 2023. If we're getting selective angles on certain incidents, I think that's setting a very just precedent. So I think more to follow there. I think World Rugby probably need to talk to French rugby organisers on that. But I mean, after 68 minutes, I mean, effectively, again, it's Toulouse kind of going through phases here again, and Jaminet again having the final say, kicking his fifth penalty here to kind of extend it out to 2016. And I suppose despite Munster's best efforts here, there was a few handling errors. Also the scrummaging here that you had lauded at the start here. Liam was starting to creak ever so slightly. Toulouse were kind of on the up on Munster's line right at the end. So again, I think as you said, the sin bin was probably a key kind of event there that really did close out the game.
Effectively, we're playing the last 10 minutes with 14 lads. And also, as you alluded to, in terms of the Toulouse scrum getting on top, it just so happened that John Ryan left and Roman Salanoa came on for that I suppose the crucial Jaminet points to bring it up to 2016 when Toulouse absolutely destroyed our scrum. And 2016, as you said, look, they were camped on our line in the last 2 minutes as well. I think overall, was it a game that we could have won? Yes, it certainly was. But at the same time too, it's a game that possibly at certain points, like in that first 20 minutes or like at the end, that we could have come away with nothing. So, I mean, overall, we all wanted to get that basically losing bonus point. That's realistically what we were all thinking could happen and did. I think we're very happy to take it.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy to take it, given the circumstances, particularly in the first 30 minutes, Liam. We were under the pump completely. I mean, there's no getting around it. I mean, and maybe it's a learning for the Munster team going into a last 16 on the road. They have to start these games completely on the money. Otherwise, if you're giving teams of the calibre of Toulouse 11 points advantages here, despite the best efforts, winning the contest 2-1, you have an uphill task to secure these wins. And I suppose the other learning coming off this now is on games of this magnitude where fine margins are so minute, who's the Munster Rugby place kicker going forward? We have Carberry, we've Jack Crowley, there's Ben Healy there as well. So I'd be fascinated to see this 10 battle here. I mean, realistically, I suppose Healy probably getting minimal game time now. It's probably between Crowley and Carberry, but I suppose the question here, Liam, is place kicking in these key games. You need to be nailing it. And we saw the case study with Jaminet in terms of nailing his kicks. I think he went 5 for 6. I mean, these are the fine margins here. We lose by 4, but I mean, it's maybe a harsh reality here that Munster do have to kind of focus a little bit on their place kicking here.
But I mean, I suppose, look, I mean, Crowley at the very least will probably be playing at 12, so he will be probably taking the kicks from now on. I think that's just the way it's going to be. As I said, look, Healy will probably be more of a bench impact player if he does come back from the Six Nations. Yeah, Carberry, I think he's just confidence again, gets low at times, and particularly it affects his place kicking. Now, I know you could say with some of those conversion misses, they weren't that far off, but at the end of the day, a miss is a miss in a crucial game, a tight game.
Yeah, and you'd wonder with that hit from Richie Arnold as well, did that have any impact in terms of his place kicking? Because for me, Carberry's place kicking has been one of his core strengths in terms of his in terms of his place kicking has been usually exemplary. So I think that might have played a factor here, Liam. I really do. And I think, to be fair to Joey Carberry, now it's just a case of regrouping, reflecting on things. We're going to talk about this Ireland Six Nations squad in a few minutes, but I mean, for Carberry, it's just a case of knuckling down, training hard here, and really rebuilding the confidence, really. But I think it's a live battle here in terms of the 10 jersey for the rest of the season and going into the playoffs. But I suppose, Liam, with that, I think it was a great performance, to be fair to Munster. I think we asked Munster to deliver the performance, and to be fair, competed, and again, a loser bonus point is showing progression. But again, it's these key learnings. You know, it's all well and good to laud about the 49-minute try, but again, there needs to be progression here that we need to get on the other side of the victory here on these tight margin games. I'm thinking of Leinster Rugby here particularly as well. There's been a few near misses this season, so I think it's just a case of the team really learning from these and coming forward a bit more to kind of get over the line on these tight games. I suppose, Liam, can I get your viewpoint in terms of Ulster, Leinster as well? I mean, Leinster got a stern test against Racing 92 before kind of blowing the game wide open on that 36-10 win at the Viva. And Ulster claiming a good victory over Sale Sharks, a much needed win at the Kingspan. I suppose you watched the Ulster Rugby Sale Sharks game. I suppose your reaction to that.
Look, I mean, Ulster at the end of the day, if you look at a scoreboard and it's 22-11, you think, wow, that's comfortable. But of course, it was far from comfortable in that game, because actually Sale started the game in the better way. It went 3-0 up, and I suppose the first 10 minutes was all Sale. So I mean, then we had a yellow card for Sale in the 16th minute, and I think that was quite crucial, because about 3 or 4 minutes later we had Rob Little going over after an overtopped ball to get them going in 5-3, and Sale responding with a penalty. And though I, to be fair to him, had his kicking boots on that day, you know, and penalty. So half time was 8-6, you know, all in the melted pot. But to be fair, Ulster came out and scored through crucial tries in the second half. I suppose Vermeulen's try in the 77th minute, it got it out to what it was, like 9 points, 20 points to 11. That was the crucial try. So I think Ulster would be quite happy that in a key European game they were able to put in a good performance.
Completely agree there, Liam. I think pleasing aspect for me for Ulster was how they finished the game in that last quarter. You know, the impact subs that came and delivered, which was very pleasing. I thought the fact that Vermeulen's try, I think that was a key one. You could feel and sense relief around Kingspan once that try went over. 2-score game. They were never coming back into it. But before then, it got increasingly nervy, particularly in that third quarter. So I think all credit to Ulster. It's been a very dodgy, rocky patch for them in the season. And you'd hope, just based on this 22-11 result, that this galvanised the squad, it galvanises management and the supporters, and propels them on for the rest of the season. I mean, for Sale Sharks, I still think that 14-player shift that they put in against Toulouse did probably have an effect, particularly at the end. They were a little bit weary at the end. Creativity was pretty much dried up in the last 10 minutes, but I take nothing away from Ulster Rugby. I thought it was just a real backs against the wall performance, because that's what it required. I mean, the season was pretty much on the line. If they lost this one, Liam, heaven knows what the implications for URC action this weekend. So, I mean, they needed to win. They got the results, and sure, look, they're in the big dance last 16. That's given their 39-0 loss to Sale at the start of this pool phase. I think they would happily grab that.
Yeah, I think so too. And as I said, look, the season kind of has in the past 2 weeks suddenly Ulster have got it back on board. You know, even though losing to La Rochelle, but the manner of the performance was key there. And then to back it up a week later with a more definite sort of result. So, I mean, look, Ulster will go to Leinster. They certainly will put in a good performance, I think, and give Leinster a real game of it. Yeah, I mean, look, the season's on for them. And then again, coming into the URC, their confidence is up for sure.
Exactly, because I mean we can go to Leinster Rugby. I mean, we said last week that Racing 92 would come over. There would be motivation after that Le Havre loss to Leinster, and certainly improved for 65 minutes here, Liam. It was a very combative performance from Racing 92. Very aggressive defensive line speed, putting Rossburn particularly under pressure at 10. Also, the pack were under pressure from Leinster. Again, that defensive maul is going to be something that needs to be very quickly addressed from a Leinster Rugby perspective. But Leinster found a way, didn't they, particularly in the last quarter, to really split this game open. And we talk about Stern test, but they still scored 6 tries in the 36-10 win over Racing 92. I suppose your thoughts after that game?
Certainly, it seemed that the Jamie Osborne, Gary Ringrose partnership at centre is really kicking off. And I know it was definitely the performance of a lifetime from Gary Ringrose, but it also, I suppose, highlighted that Osborne is the leading contender to partner him in the Six Nations.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there on Osborne. Now, again, I think it was a nice test for Osborne. Thought Racing 92 really did try to target Osborne defensively. He stood up to it. But again, creativity-wise, along with Ringrose, I think Ringrose takes an awful lot of plaudits in terms of he's linking up play, some assists. He scores 2 tries as well. But again, that is a nice 3/4 combination here, Liam, leading into Six Nations. I suppose would Andy Farrell be so bold to actually put Jamie Osborne in a debut in the Principality Stadium against Wales?
Well, I think kind of why wouldn't you really? I suppose, look, when you've got that experience all surrounding you, it's kind of one of those things where he can't not but succeed, in a way on his debut. He is the leading light. He's been the leading centre of the new and upcoming players since that Emerging Ireland tour. He's backed it up all the step of the way. Look, I mean, with the situation with McCluskey, where he's not quite, going at the moment to be a first choice for Ulster, where Bundy Aki is out of the picture, where Henshaw is basically injured and just coming back from injury, and where we have Crowley playing 12 for Munster. So, look, it's a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like it when you describe it in that terms anyway, Liam. It'll be fascinating to see that Ireland 3/4 selection, definitely. But I mean, he's in form. His stats in the last few weeks have kind of backed it up in terms of European Cup action. His cohesion with Ringrose improving every week. So yeah, probably is 12-13 Leinster tandem there. And it's really up for likes of Henshaw and McCluskey Reid to kind of fight for their jersey when they come back. So, but I suppose, Liam, getting to the defensive side of the ball for Leinster, I thought it was 2 great tries from Racing 92. First one from Tarrant in the opening period really did expose Leinster again from a defensive maul perspective. And then you had Christian Wade with a very nice sweeping move for a try. So I suppose there's little elements here for Leinster Rugby, and maybe the scrummaging as well, maybe kind of exposed once or twice as well. So for teams eyeing up Leinster, there's probably scope to exploit maybe come March, April.
It certainly seems to be a point in terms of getting at Leinster, shall I say. One of the few kind of outlets, and it certainly is one to be exploited by Ulster. I mean, they have the capability of all teams with their powerful carriers and the way they're whether it's Herring or whether it's Stewart. I mean, they have the guys coming around the back there who can carry and maul themselves over a line.
Yeah, it's going to have to be full-on aggressive line speed from Ulster in that last 16 contest. Will it be in the RDS? Will that be in the Aviva? Who knows? But I think from Ulster's perspective, they're well capable of executing a good defensive line speed game plan, putting pressure on either Sexton or Rossburn. They've seen historically they've run Leinster close. I know the RDS in November was a little bit of a banana skin, but again, look at the opening period. They really had Leinster in 6s and 7s. So I think there's plenty of motivation for Ulster. And I wouldn't necessarily rule them out here. And given an attritional Six Nations campaign, who knows what the Leinster team might be. So I think from that perspective, I think Ulster, they're in the big dance, last 16, mission accomplished. So I think from their perspective, I think they have nothing to lose going down to Dublin. I honestly don't. And I think a good performance might ensue there. I suppose we can move on to the Challenge Cup here as well, Liam, from an Irish province perspective. we talked glowingly about Connacht Rugby here, travelling to Kingston Park, Newcastle Falcons with nothing to play for. But the one lesson in Europe is don't give opposition that have nothing to play for oxygen. And when I mean oxygen, early scores. And to be 21-0 down after 20 minutes, Liam, I think there's plenty of soul searching having to go on in that Connacht Rugby clubhouse. Again, it was a glorious opportunity to secure a home field advantage, given that Bristol Rugby or Bristol Bears were deducted points for filling in an eligible player, but didn't get the job done. I suppose, what's your thoughts in terms of Connacht Rugby and where their season's headed?
Yeah, well, where is it headed? It's headed, to be frank about it, to be an early exit. Because Benetton, I mean, while we're playing them next week and we're all, we're very confident they're out without 15 players, international players in Italy. I mean, when they're all back, Benetton are as good as any team in Europe at home. And they have as good a home record. So, I mean, you're looking at Connacht potentially losing to Benetton. And then what? I mean, they're already pretty much out of it in terms of the URC. So it's a very delicate situation. Now, again, no Aki to appear. And when you leave the likes of John Porch at home, you have to question the whole selection policy and just what's going on there.
I mean, the squad that went over here, Liam, was more than capable of beating the Newcastle Falcons. This is no disrespect to the Falcons, but I mean, to be fairness, you're looking at the back line. You've Matt Hansen at 15, Adam Byrne, Brian Ralston, Cathal Ford, Alex Watton, Conor Fitzgerald, Colin Riley in at 9, Dennis Buckley, Delahunt, Beelum, Fafita, Josh Murphy, Hurley Langton, Conor Oliver, and Jared Butler. No disrespect here, Liam. I think it's just attitude on the day, to be fair. I mean, you can't be giving teams, as I say, Newcastle Falcons the oxygen here, and certainly that's how it proved. I mean, you don't expect to win a game when you're 21-0 down, and I mean, I think this is a harsh lesson for Connacht Rugby in terms of preparation. I don't know what may have gone on in terms of preparation here, but I mean, this was a key game for Connacht Rugby in the context of their season. They may not admit it, but I thought the Challenge Cup was their kind of outlet, their gateway here to get Champions Cup qualification. And, to not secure home field advantage here, it's desperately disappointing here, given the performance that they put in, particularly against Brive previous weekend.
Yeah, it is. I mean, to actually, give one of the performances of the season in the Challenge Cup 1 week, and then to come out and give maybe the worst performance of the weekend across the Challenge Cup the following week. Is it just that it's kind of like for Andy Friend? Is he just kind of winding down the season at this stage? I'm not too sure. For Connacht fans, it must be kind of worrying that the season is kind of petering out, essentially.
I know there was a series of contract renewals last week before the Newcastle Falcon game to probably create a feel-good factor around and hoping for a good result. But the fact of the matter is they've lost. They're on the road. We'll talk about Benetton Rugby in a little bit here, but the fact of the matter is the back three for Newcastle Falcons combined for 165 metres during the 80 minutes. And to be perfectly honest, that's just telling the tale of the tape here. Too many opportunities for Newcastle Falcons here. There's too many line breaks. Now, Finlay Beelum has to be duly noted here. A hat-trick of tries here. He could do no more. But I think, to be fair, I think this has to go on both management and players here who were on duty last weekend. It's just, I think it's one of the low points for the season for Connacht Rugby. I seriously do. And they do have the Lions coming to Sports Ground this weekend and to be perfectly fair, Lions with a full strength squad. They showed their potency against Munster. I think this could be one of these games here for Connacht Rugby that if they're not careful here, Lions could actually pull up a road trip win.
Yeah, and again, this is a crucial part of the season. You think, this is kind of the crucial part of the season. And the South African teams are going to be pretty much full strength. With no Six Nations involvement. So yeah, I mean, I think you'd be kind of backing the Lions to get the win there, and that really does put the kibosh completely on Connacht getting anything out of the URC this season.
Yeah, because the rumours are circulating again here, Liam, and I don't know where they're coming from. Bundy Akai and his long-term future with Connacht Rugby has been called into doubt. Now, Connacht Rugby have issued a statement to speak, confident. And that's the key word, confident, that Bundy will be a Connacht player next season. But where is his likely destinations here, Liam? I mean, this circulated a few years ago, but I've heard Munster Rugby's name be mentioned, but I don't think Munster are probably in the market.
The only thing is, Mark, he is centrally contracted. So, I mean, the IRFU would have to, if they want to let him go, they'd have to basically also pay him off the last year of his central contract. So this is essentially the IRFU finding him a home somewhere else if he doesn't want to be at Connacht. Or if Connacht, more to the point, I'd say more don't want him, which is quite clear. So his choice would be simply to go to Ulster or to Munster. Potentially, even if those two teams don't really want him in their squad. I think 3 years ago, we would have hit the arm off to have someone like him. Exactly what we're looking for. But right now, I don't think that he fits Munster's game plan at all, where we actually want to play some really good rugby. Yeah. Backs and forwards combining. So it would be a backward step for us to get a guy like him when we have other positions to fill, I guess.
Yeah, because to be fair to Connacht Rugby management, they've based it on form. And the fact is, like Cathal Ford has come in. I mean, he was in the Emerging Ireland Tour. We repeatedly mentioned this Emerging Ireland Tour on players that have progressed and gone to the next level. And Cathal Ford being one of those guys, you know, he's come in and has impressed and has kept his spot. I mean, Tom Daly, you've Farrell as well. So, I mean, for Bundy's perspective, he's not budging these guys at the moment. Byron Ralston played at the weekend as well at 3/4. So there's something definitely amiss here. I agree with you. I think Munster's rugby's attacking play ethos, the combination of backs and forwards, that dynamic ball handling that we saw in the 49th minute for Ty Burns' try, is Bundy really fitting into that style of play? I think not. And I think, to be fair, there's probably plenty to come out of this in the next week or two, just in terms of what's happening with his Connacht Rugby situation, because I was surprised that he didn't travel to Kingston Park for the game against Newcastle Falcons purely because of lack of game time and because he's been selected to a Six Nations Ireland squad. He surely should have been getting some game minutes. So I think there's plenty to go in terms of this player link, and this statement from Connacht Rugby is really adding fuel to the flames here in terms of player speculation. So I think it's an interesting one, and I just wonder here in terms of Munster personnel, is there something afoot here in terms of maybe Chris Farrell? He's had a lengthy absence from Munster Rugby. I don't know. I think there's probably news in the offing here in terms of personnel here as well for Munster. This is the time of year when contract renewals and departures are announced, so all to follow there. But I suppose, Liam, kind of going back to the Champions Cup and Challenge Cup, like the Champions Cup last 16, any real fixtures there catching your eye right now?
Challenge Cup? Well, I mean, look, Benjamin Connacht, in a way, is going to be an absolute cracking game. I've absolutely no doubt about that. But, yeah, I'd have to say probably the Lions at home to Racing. That's quite an intriguing tie to me. That's going to be just another free-flowing game. I think Racing, at the same time, can actually kind of pull in that free-flowing game of the Lions, pick up a win in South Africa. I think that can happen.
Yeah, I think there's some intriguing games. The Bristol Bears Claremont O'Fern game may not kind of catch people's attention, but I think this is a real key game for both teams, given where they sit in their respective domestic leagues. I think it's a season-defining game for either of them. Again, Bristol really struggling in the Gallagher Premiership. Claremont are vying just about for a playoff spot at the moment. But again, there's a pathway to Champions Cup here. I think both teams with something to prove there. And also Cardiff Rugby, Sale Sharks. Now, provided Cardiff Rugby can stabilise their form, because their form has fallen off a cliff in the last few weeks here, Liam. And they're a club that we kind of really do rate in terms of their squad. But it's been tested at the moment. That Brive performance, I thought, was a bit of a surprise and wake-up call. But they play Sale Sharks in Cardiff as well. I think that will be a very much a free-flowing game as well. There's a few, I think, I hate to say it, a few blowouts here. I think Toulon Cheetahs, Toulon should get the job done there. Glasgow Warriors Dragons, I would be strongly favouring Glasgow. And then Scarlets Brive, like, it shows everything that's wrong with the Challenge Cup when Brive got in by the skin of their teeth to play Scarlets, who are top seeds. I would expect Scarlets to probably win. Brive probably no interest whatsoever in this competition. So I think that there's plenty of fixtures there, as we've called out here, that will probably provide some great entertainment for the rugby neutral here come end of March. But I suppose Champions Cup as well here, Liam. Last 16, Munster travelling to Durban to the Sharks, one of the standout.
Yeah.
What's your initial thoughts on that fixture for Munster Rugby? I mean, it's daunting in terms of the pack, but not impossible.
In terms of Durban, it's kind of a very wet, humid place. So it could be if it's a wet day, it'll just become a real ding-dong battle. And I think, to be honest, I would prefer to go to the Sharks than I would, say, to Pretoria or to go to Cape Town to face the Stormers.
Yeah,
that's for certain. So I think the draw for us is quite good. It gives us a reasonable chance of coming through. Because the only other result I see as a potential away win would be Edinburgh at Leicester, who just by losing their coaching structure, they've lost complete shape as well, and very, very doable as well there.
Again, we know all needs to know about Sharks. I thought Sharks and the Harlequins at the Stoop was a magnificent fixture there last weekend. Probably a standout fixture, really. Munster and Toulouse was very exciting as well, but I think for just sheer entertainment, for tries and quality of game, I thought Quinn's Sharks was brilliant. And I mean, Eben Ethabed, the pack platform there is going to be a big challenge for Munster, but Munster have risen to the challenge here in terms of Toulouse. And Sharks do give you opportunities here, Liam. There's no consistency I see in terms of a full 80-minute performance from the Sharks this season. I think Munster will run Sharks very close here. And again, Munster learning all the time, evolving all the time. Wouldn't at all surprise me if Munster were to pull off a win in Durban. Seriously do. I mean, there's a few blowouts here. I'm looking at La Rochelle, Gloucester straight away. I don't fancy Gloucester's prospects given what Leinster Rugby did to Gloucester in this pool stage. I think that's kind of one. And I think Toulouse Bulls as well is probably another one where Toulouse probably will be strongly favoured. The only other game that I really kind of see here is Stormers Harlequins. I think that'll be a fantastic game on the Cape. Just in terms of Harlequins' style of play versus the Stormers, who delivered some sensational tries in that 30-14 win over Clermont-Auvergne in the second half. So I think there'll be plenty of fireworks in that one.
Yeah, and even I mean a good old fashioned, forward orientated game will be Exeter at home against Montpellier. So that'll be one for the traditionalists for sure.
Oh, I love it. No, the pack platform will be amazing in that one, provided Montpellier, and I'd say Montpellier will bring a strong team over, given that it's the big dance last 16. I think they'll be fairly keyed up. Exeter, they went through the motions, I think, a little bit against Cast at the weekend, but Montpellier with their pack platform, but they've been very inconsistently. The 21-all draw against London Irish, that was the surprise result for me last weekend. Credit to London Irish for pulling out that result, but I thought Montpellier were a little bit better than that, to be perfectly fair. They're going to have to step it up remarkably well in Sandy Park to really compete with Exeter, but I suppose we're kind of getting into the end of March here, so form lines could fluctuate pretty quickly. Leicester, Edinburgh we talked about. Saracens Ospreys as well in the last 16, and all credit to Ospreys pulling off that result in Welford Road. But I think it might be a different beast against the Saracens. Do you give any chance here to Ospreys? Pull up an upset here against the Saracens?
I think Saracens will get a good start, and then the Ospreys won't be able to catch up. And look, the Ospreys, they've had an absolutely excellent season in Europe, but I would certainly think Saracens will come through there. I suppose, look, and the last game we didn't mention was Toulouse against the Bulls, which is quite intriguing for sure. I still think of the teams that I've seen so far, obviously Munster have been with Toulouse in those two games, but Toulouse to me look as good as being up there in my view with Leinster and the Stormers so far.
I'm just looking at the Bulls' home or road record this year in Europe. I'm just thinking particularly about their trip to Sandy Park in Exeter, where they got blown away by Exeter Chiefs, and I think this is maybe a little step up from that. Now, a lot to be said in terms of Bulls. There might be personnel additions here. They'll need it, because I think Toulouse, let's say if France go on a good run of form in Six Nations, like Jaminet and Tamac, Dupont, a few of those guys by as well, I think it could be a case of hitting the ground running. And I think Toulouse are a different animal, particularly when the pitches do dry up. They do have that physicality up front five. but they do have pace out wide as well. And I think for the Bulls, I think that could be a very daunting trip, if I'm being brutally honest. But end of March, early April, fixtures there. Who knows what might entail here after, as I said, a very attritional Six Nations tournament. I suppose we can talk about Munster Benetton a little bit of a quick preview, because our squad depth charts will be fairly tested. And we thought that with Munster, but if you look at Benetton Rugby, they've won 7 of their 8 home fixtures in the URC, but they have 15 players that have been selected for the Italian Six Nations campaign. So again, it's going to be an awful lot of squad depth players here really taking part on Saturday. I suppose, what's your initial impressions here from Munster Rugby perspective? Who do you think we might see feature, and do you give Munster a good chance of beating Benetton given the personnel changes that Treviso will have to contend with?
Finney Wycherley, I understand, is coming back, so I think we could see certainly him coming off the bench at some stage, getting back into Munster play. I suppose the key thing is out half. What's going to happen there? I think we'll have Ben Healy maybe for the final time for quite a time against Benetton, and obviously we'll have Joey there as well. It'll be interesting to see who will actually take kicks if those two guys are available. I think that the fact is that Benetton are likely losing 15 players to Italy to have the depth chart to keep their excellent run going. So I think that we will get victory in our crucial victory, keep our season going, and I think come the end of the Six Nations, it's looking that Munster will be right up the table.
Yeah, because I think it's a key fixture here. I mean, you look at the state of play going in here. Benetton are currently sat in 6th place in the table on 33 points. Munster right behind them at 7th on 32. Again, a win for Munster propels them up the table, which is a key one for them. Yeah, I'd agree with you there. I think for Benetton Rugby, I think this time of year really does test out the depth chart particularly. Now, depth chart wise, from Benetton Rugby, I think they still have plenty of foreign players in the mix that may be eager to get some game time. But I think, to be brutally honest with you here, there's an awful lot of fluctuations here, particularly in the 3rd, 4th quarter. I think Munster not too impacted. I think there was 8 players selected to Six Nations duty.
I suppose if I can add that John Ryan's final game for Munster, crucial as well.
Exactly. So he will be getting game time as well. So I know indication is Keenan Knox is near enough to return, but maybe this comes a little bit too soon for him. But I would expect Carberry to definitely slot in at 10. I think he needs the reps. I think he needs game minutes to kind of build the confidence, build the form guide back up again. And hopefully now with a good dominant pack in front of him, he can really kind of showcase his skill set. You know, he's not a bad player overnight. So I think the key decision here would be on full back here, Liam. Given that Mike Haley is going for an ankle surgery scan this week, that looked pretty severe. And given the form of Haley, I suppose, who would you slot in at 15, given the personnel that we have for this weekend?
Who would I slot in? Yeah, it's a good question, isn't it? You would probably do something like put Carberry potentially to 15, realistically, and put Healy at 10. It kind of, I know it's a mad thing to say, but it kind of makes sense at the moment, if I can say that.
Yeah, I suppose you've Shane Daly as well at 15. You probably have Nash, probably outside chance at 15, but I suppose Daly or Carberry probably the picks there. You do want solid, experience going away from home. And as I said, regardless of a team that's out, Benetton are building a fortress in Treviso. The fact that in 8 home games, like the last home game in the URC, they turned over Ulster. Now, granted, fully stacked side, but I mean, it does show that this is a club on the up, that their home form is very strong this year. So I think Munster have to come in here and deliver a good performance. But again, it's that Six Nations window here. The cohesion's not going to be right here for either side for good stretches. So it's just who's the team that's going to be the best to execute at given times here. So if this was a Benetton Rugby team fully stacked, I would be a little bit nervous for Munster Rugby travelling over there. But I think given the result here, given the magnitude of the result, if the result can go Munster's way, I think it's a key one here from a playoff push perspective, because then you have the home stand, you have the Ospreys, you have the Scarlets, and you have Glasgow Warriors before you turn into the South African leg of the URC with the trips to the Stormers and also the Sharks. So I think from that perspective, this is one for Munster probably to win here. If it's a bonus point, that would be beautiful. But I think, to be fair, just get the win and then move on. I suppose, Liam, if you're still there, Ireland Six Nations squad announced last week. What were your impressions there? Who are the winners? Who are the losers?
Well, the big winner was definitely young Jamie Osborne, who's come from absolutely nowhere. You know, at the start of the season, to be honest, I didn't think that anyone who didn't feature in the autumn internationals, there would be no more debuts for any new Irish players. But look, it's fully deserved for him. So I think he's definitely one of those players. In terms of kind of query and surprising selections, I would have to say Keith Earls, who pretty much now is not even in Munster's first choice 15. That's just the fact of the matter. And Jacob Stockdale, whose form had fallen off a cliff. Those guys, I'm quite surprised with those two guys.
I think there was winners. There were definitely losers in this. I mean, Osborne, you've basically said, received his first senior call-up. I think we're big fans of his in terms of his performance, but he's going to elevate his game. He have to elevate his game more. This is Test match rugby now. This is up another notch. So I think it'll be interesting just to see where he fits into Andy Farrell's team selections here, because he's obviously going to get game minutes, given what we've discussed earlier in terms of maybe inactivity of certain guys in three quarters that were selected. Gavin Coombs coming back in as well, I think was a huge one. You know, given the November International Series, Coombs was dropped, probably got the kick up the butt behind here, and his performances have really reflected the guy with plenty to prove. So I think from that perspective, very well, earned. I suppose Jack Crowley as well, retaining his squad berth. But as I said, I heard was a Bernard Jackman about credit in the bank, and I think a few of these, like Bundy, Conor Murray, I would say Keith Earls as well. There's guys here there for experience, yes, but I suppose question for me here, Liam, is are we going to see any of these three guys going to feature in this Ireland 15 for the crunch games? I mean, Wales in Principality Stadium, I'd expect probably the strongest 23-man squad going, but I mean, like Bundy, Conor Murray, and also Keith Earls have played precious little this season, really. I suppose selections there that are questionable, but I mean, will they get any game time here for Andy Farrell?
Well, look, I suppose of those, the most obvious one would be Murray for sure. As a kind of an off the bench option. In the physicality of the Six Nations, that might be something that's quite appealing to Andy Farrell. But look, as for Bundy Aki and Keith Earls, I honestly can't see them featuring at all, in the Six Nations. That's why I'm just kind of struggling to figure out how they got in. If we're talking about form, right? We're talking about form, and yet then on form, Joey Carberry didn't get in. So again, it's just a kind of a trying to find that logic from Andy Farrell at this stage.
It was just the inconsistency of it, Liam, for me. Certain guys were rewarded for their form, and then you heard about certain guys coming in because of their experience, which sets maybe dangerous precedents a little bit in terms of squad selection and people knowing where their place is. So again, for people looking on the outside, I suppose hopefully candid feedback was probably received to those guys to see where they can improve to get into the squad. But yeah, it's interesting. I thought it was an interesting squad selection. It probably opens up Andy Farrell here to a little bit of criticism here if things don't go correctly for Ireland. I mean, that Welsh game in the Principality Stadium, you think about it, the return of Warren Gatland, and Osprey's side that are revitalised have done well in Europe. I think it's a prime booby trap here for Ireland, and a loss there, heaven forbid, Andy Farrell and Ireland are a little bit under pressure, and the main maybe squad selection is then basically pinpointed as one of those reasons.
Yeah, look, I mean, they don't come much harder a start than going to the Principality Stadium, and Wales will always try and get on the run from the very beginning at home. Yeah, I also, I suppose, look, I want to see young Joe McCarthy. That's something I'm intrigued to see. Will he be given a lot of game time? Because I have great hopes for him. And look, I mean, you alluded to Gavin Coombs. To me, he is the bench option in terms of that kind of back row, right?
Yeah.
He just has to be. He just has to be, even ahead of Jack Conan. And yeah, again, we come down to, in particular for me, the prop situation where we have the likes of Healy on one side and Kilcoyne. I mean, is that all we're left with? And on the other side, we have Tom O'Toole. It's kind of, hard to see him getting much game time either.
I think we need to see Tom O'Toole play, Liam, to be perfectly honest. I think the fitness issues of Tyke Furlong here is really suggesting to me that our tight head situation has to be seriously evaluated now. I don't think Tyke Furlong, given scheduling here for the World Cup 2023, is going to be able to play every game. So there needs to be an evaluation in terms of tight head as a matter of urgency. Tom O'Toole has been thereabouts in terms of his squad selection, but we've seen very precious little of him. I would hope that we could see him against Italy or see him against one of the other teams here to really kind of see what he's like. Does he have test match credentials here? Because my fear here, Liam, and I think your fear as well, is heaven forbid Andrew Porter and Furlong were to go down from injury. We're really looking at squad depth issues here in the prop situation. Now, Cian Healy, we know, is a proven operator. Dave Kilcoyne as well, but even from a loose side perspective, I think it's a little bit of an alarm bell situation that there doesn't seem to be much in terms of new blood coming through that rank. And also tight head as well. I think we need to really seriously evaluate our options here. But again, time is running out. You would hope that these depth chart questions would have been closed out long ago.
Yeah, you certainly would. And again, I mean, look, for me, Marty Moore was, to my mind, probably at least a choice tight head for Ireland, in terms of his scrummaging ability. So yeah, I mean, look, we in Ireland, I think a lot of us, to be honest, at this stage, want to experiment in the Six Nations. But for the IRFU, it's such a cash cow. They simply won't allow that really to happen apart from the Italian game. I mean, we even have to look at Hugh Keenan. I mean, yeah, he's the 15, but the point is, who do we have as backup for Hugo Keenan?
I think that's where you're seeing Mac Hansen being slotted into 15. I think there's been a bit of an experiment here from Connacht Rugby to see Mac Hansen at 15, and to be fair to Mac Hansen, he has acquitted himself very well there. Now, Test Match Rugby is a completely different beast. So, I mean, you'd have him. Jimmy O'Brien could slot in at 15 as well. Now, Jacob Stockdale only coming back into the squad, I'd say would prefer to be on the wing, if at all possible, but probably got the teeth and go back to fullback if need be. So I think we do have options there, Liam, particularly at that fullback position, but maybe not tested. I mean, Keith Earls could go back at fullback as well. So there is some versatility there, particularly in the outside backs here, to certainly stake a claim. But I suppose the big story was in terms of the Carberry omission here, Liam. Do you feel that was warranted, just given form lines at the moment?
Yeah, I think so. If you look on the line through form, I mean, you have Sexton obviously there, and then you have Jack Crowley, and yeah, Emmett Byrne. Like, I suppose up to last weekend, ironically, and the game against Racing up to then, he showed great form, both from his kicking and his general play. I suppose the thing is too, though, which is intriguing for me, is that Jack Crowley is playing 12 for Munster and has pretty much played all season. He isn't getting in terms of on form, in terms of he's on good form at 12, but he has obviously shown no form at 10. That's intriguing to me too. But look, yeah, I think Joey's form is just he's a confidence player in particular, and his goal kicking is also kind of coming part of it.
I think Carberry still has an outside chance. I still think he has a good chance of World Cup 2023 squad inclusion. I think it's just now he can use the inspiration of Gavin Coombs here a little bit to kind of provide that as motivation to say, look, if he produces the performances, he's regularly kind of a high achiever in terms of all the feedback that he's been received apparently by Danby Farrell, that he will be given opportunities here. And I think it is a big opportunity here for Ross Byrne and Jack Crowley to really stake a claim here. So I think from that perspective, I think for Carberry, it's just, I would hope that he gets significant game time against Benetton Rugby, delivers a great performance. Then we have a few home games coming up, and he delivers a run of form. and it is a fascinating point that you make here, Liam, in terms of Carberry, in terms of playing 10. Crowley's been playing 12 and 15, but when the business end of the games have happened in the third quarter, Carberry basically gets substituted. Crowley in at 10. It's a strange one here, to be honest, because I think a decision will have to be made here in terms of Crowley. If Crowley's aspirations is to be a 10 here, where does that leave Joey Carberry? And I thought that was maybe one for after the World Cup 2023. But if things are not too careful here, Carberry could be the one here, maybe kind of looking to be accommodated in the fullback slot, where I know Carberry is probably, he's a 10. You know, he wants to be 10. So I think that's going to be an intriguing watch here, Liam. I suppose the Ulster Rugby representation here on the squad, for me, was a surprise. I think an awful lot in terms of fluctuating form lines heading into this. I felt sorry a bit for Nick Timoney, given how competitive that back row unit is, that squad. He was the guy to lose out with Gavin Coombs coming in. But the likes of Mike Lowry, I think James Hume as well is probably asking a few questions in terms of the omission there, given that Bundy is basically in with minimal game time. So I think from an Ulster Rugby perspective, plenty of guys here that have plenty of motivation now to produce performances for Ulster, get on the front foot and get in the radar of Andy Farrell again.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose it's going to be intriguing to see the second row battle as well, with Henderson back in there as well. Will he be a bench option or will he start? And I in terms of the centres, again, you know, you have McCluskey, you have Aki, you have the two Leinster pairing as well. So yeah, I think that certainly Osborne and Ringrose will certainly come through there.
Exactly, because I'd wonder what Wales, in terms of Kieran Williams, the Ospreys, three quarters, you know, he's been lighting it up for the Welsh region this season. Will he come in? If that is the case, then, you know, Osborne, you know, selection could be coming in following suit. So I think you might see a little bit of exciting prospects there in that three quarters for both teams in the Principality. And I suppose going back to the title head situation here, Liam, for sure. I mean, we didn't mention Finlay Bealham here. I think Bealham needs game time as well, because his form for Connacht has been outstanding this year. You know, the hat-trick for Newcastle Falcons, I think he's been a very prominent performer, and he hasn't let the side down for Ireland in November International Series. So I would hope that he gets starting minutes, even though Furlong might be fit and ready to go. I think we need to be not overly dependent on Furlong. I think we know what Furlong brings. He's a world-class prop. But I think we also need to know what's behind us here. And I think Bealham definitely, but Tom O'Toole definitely, I think, needs to be an evaluation needs to be made here in terms of who are our three tight head props. I think we know 1 and 2, but I think definitely our third depth chart here has to be clarified. And I think it's across the board, I would say here, Liam, in terms of loose head, hooker and tight head here. Just in terms of, that's just the only vulnerability I could see here in terms of the pack here. And hopefully we could answer a few questions in one or two of these fixtures in the tournament coming up.
And of course, Mark, I mean, what I've actually come to the conclusion of is Porter going across to Toulouse was not a good decision. In the sense of he was the guy, he was the bench impact at tight head. I mean, tight head is a position also where, you know, we were a bit more well stacked. And it looks to me anyway that when we talk about planning, that it didn't quite go that way.
Yeah, although there was a need there as well at loose head, you know, with Keane Healy, absolutely unbelievable servant. He's still in the squad. But again, I think there was probably a single point of failure, particularly in that unit. Now, you have Dave Kilcoyne coming back in, which is great to see. Jeremy Lockman obviously is in the depth chart as well. But I think there was probably an ask here, or probably a need to get Porter to come over. Again, it's between himself and Furlong. Furlong starting all day long in terms of tight head and a prominent game. So again, Porter and his physicality needed to be used. And again, it's just that, yeah, I would be a little bit careful with Porter now. I'd be interested to see his performances in the tournament, particularly from a scrummaging perspective, because officials have seemed to kind of pick on him there in recent weeks. So I think it'll be a very interesting watch there for Porter. But I think that decision had to be made. But I think the IRFU, Andy Farrell would have expected other talent to be coming through, particularly in a tight head prop situation, but it hasn't materialised here. I think Marty Moore is probably the one for you, wasn't it? But again, he's out with a lengthy injury here now as well. And maybe it's something to focus in on for the RFU post 2023, that we do need kind of a good kind of talent pool in the prop situation.
And look, if it was me in a World Cup, right, in the knockout stages, and if Furlong something happened to him or just had to go off, to be honest with you, I put Porter across to tight head and I bring on another loose head prop. That's what I would do.
Yeah.
And as in probably bring Healy on. That's personally what I would do.
Exactly, but I think it's a glorious opportunity for Dave Kilcoyne here, really, to stake a claim, particularly in training sessions starting this week with Ireland, to see if he can even get ahead of Cian Healy. But I mean, we know what Cian Healy brings to the table. He brings experience. He brings an awful lot of experience to that position. But it'd be great to see Dave Kilcoyne. There's Jeremy Lockman there as well, to really do kind of get into that. Have a solidified, as you say, for worst case scenarios, because the World Cup 2023, the scheduling will be aggressive. Once we get out of pool stages here, there will be crunch games, South Africa, Scotland. Yes, Get out of that. The games are going to go thick and fast. You're not going to be starting the same front five.
Yeah.
From a quarterfinal to semi-final, you're not. So again, this is where we were being exposed in previous World Cups, and I just hate to see us making the same mistake again here, Liam, to be fair.
Yeah, and look. I mean, there'll be no excuses. We have Six Nations, and I think we likely have. It hasn't been announced yet. We probably have 3 or 4 pre-World Cup games as well. So there is still plenty of games to go.
Oh, certainly is. I know Scotland announced a 4-game pre-warm-up World Cup friendly fixture schedule. So I think from their perspective, they want to hit the ground running quickly. It'll be interesting to see how Ben Healy integrates into that Scottish squad as well. That's probably for another week, probably next week in our podcast here, Liam. But I suppose kind of looking ahead, for the URC action here, is there any kind of key games here that you're kind of looking at? I'm kind of looking at fixtures here. Scarlets v Bulls. The Stormers travelling to Kingspan. Looks a tasty one on Friday night. Benetton Munster. Dragons, Glasgow Warriors. A bit of a rehearsal of the Challenge Cup. Last 16. Leinster entertain Cardiff Rugby. Edinburgh Sharks. We've already talked about Connacht Lions, and the Zebras and Ospreys doing battle on the Sunday, the 29th of January. Suppose anything there leap out to you there, Liam?
But to be fair, Edinburgh Sharks, certainly I suppose looking at Edinburgh for full strength, that would be an absolute cracking game. I still think Edinburgh, they still have their 2 Argentinian stars as well there. And so that would be quite an intriguing game for me. I suppose, look, the most obvious one would be Ulster at home to the Stormers. Stormers are still high-flying in the table. But this is a chance, like us again against the Benetton. I mean, this is a chance for Ulster to get a win against the Stormers and leapfrog them and try and get a second position to Leinster, who are inevitably going to top the table. So this is a glorious opportunity for Ulster. They probably won't be as affected, they're not as affected, say, as Leinster. So they will still put out a very good team against Stormers.
I would think so too. As we said, like the Mike Lowrys, the James Humes, the Ethan McElroys, guys like that will be playing certainly against the Stormers. Now it remains to be seen what sort of team the Stormers will provide in the Kingspan. Yeah. But seeing as there's no real kind of scheduling issues here, I think they'll probably go all out here, Liam, because I'm thinking the same for the Sharks. I'd imagine the Sharks stayed in the United Kingdom this week, being in the Stoop. So an awful lot of their frontline guys will be playing against Edinburgh on Saturday night. So I think from that perspective, it's a fascinating watch. I think from, let's say, a Leinster Cardiff Rugby perspective, I'd be just very fascinated to see where Cardiff are in terms of their form line. They've had a very dodgy patch, and you don't want to be going to the RDS looking to rediscover form, but they're going to have to come up with some sort of performance, because Leinster here are on a roll, and I think that's an intriguing one for me, just to see where Cardiff Rugby are, because if they're not on it, then their playoff aspirations. I think this could be a key weekend for Munster Rugby as well as Ulster Rugby. A win here, I can see a few losses for teams in and around Munster and Ulster to open up a bit of daylight here, you could see maybe consolidation of playoff places in the next week or two of the rounds of URC here for these two teams. So I think all evenly poised here, Liam, to be fair.
But these are the crucial games, you know. I mean, because come the end of Six Nations, effectively, teams are going to have only 2 or 3 games left in the league. So I think you'll see Munster shooting up the table, which basically we want. The South Africans are going to also be very high up the table because they have no effect of the Six Nations. Yeah, again, as we point out, Ulster have a glorious chance the next few weeks of also going up the table.
Exactly, because effectively with Six Nations tournament out of the equation, you've only 3 fixtures left, and you have 3 fixtures now that are going to be built in here, which is really going to test the squad depth. So these are going to be the minute games that are going to really decide in terms of your top 8, who wins conferences, that sort of thing. So I think, it's definitely opportunity knocks for whoever can get wins here in the next few weeks to really kind of soar up the table. I suppose, Liam, we can leave it there. It's been a lengthy one, but I think well required, just given all the topics that we need to discuss tonight. Next week, obviously, Six Nations review. We'll run the rule over the Six Nations taking part, see who's the players to watch out for, and maybe get a few predictions from you here as Liam as well in terms of champions and who's the wooden spoon recipients. But I suppose until next week, Liam, many thanks. Have a good weekend, and we'll chat next week.
Okay, thanks so much for the show, Mark.
Thank you for listening to this podcast episode. If you liked what you heard in this podcast, why not subscribe to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast on either Amazon, Spotify, YouTube or Twitter platforms. You can also follow me at Hawkeye Sidekick on Facebook and Twitter for the latest sporting opinions, articles and reports.